Hey everybody, welcome to What is Nerd? I'm your host Tyler Dietz, and with me are Nick Grant and JP Cochran. How you doing, y'all?
Doing good, man. Happy to be here and getting nerdy with each other.
Riding nerdy.
I don't think so.
Now, so originally we had said that this podcast would be covering the original trilogy as a whole. However, we're just going to be talking about the Star Wars franchise, just kind of a general overview, and we'll be doing a summary and kind of a reflection on Episode 4, A New Hope, a.k.a. Star Wars, just regular Star Wars. We're going to be covering The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi next week. We figured that would be a lot more manageable. I think the episode would have been like 5 hours long if we would have done all the movies together. So, little thing about this show that you're listening to. Between us three, we all represent the spectrum of nerdiness, from myself up at the top to JP down at the bottom and Nick somewhere in between. The point of this show is to serve as an introduction and an overview of all things that are widely considered to be nerdy entertainment. This includes comic books, anime, video games, board games, and different types of science fiction and fantasy. And right now we're starting with the big daddy of all science fiction, Star Wars. If you enjoy the show, like us on our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter at WhatIsNerd1. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to us on your podcasting platform of choice. Leave us a rating and review as well. We would greatly appreciate that. Also, check out our sister show, What is Sports? And finally, if you have any questions or comments, send us an email at winerdcast@gmail.com, or you can just post a comment on our Facebook wall. That will get to us as well. So, Star Wars. I grew up with Star Wars like most kids, right? Most kids.
Most kids, yeah.
Our age, yes. Most kids, excluding JP.
I'm sure there's others. I mean, we can't say JP's like 1 in a billion. I mean, I'm sure there are other kids who
1 in 100. I would say people our age, because I know that Star Wars isn't as popular as younger kids. Like a lot of my students, I'm an 8th grade teacher for anyone listening to this that doesn't know already. But a lot of my students don't like Star Wars. They think it's nerdy, but ironically, these kids are obsessed with like superheroes and Transformers and stuff. But
I think Transformers is probably better than Star Wars, but we can go into that later.
I think you are an idiot.
I'm just kidding.
It's a robot that turns into a car.
Right.
I mean, it's not that cool.
Well, does Star Wars have Shia LaBeouf in it?
No, they don't. So I'll give you that. All right,
I'm just kidding.
Gotta get some even Steven.
Is Mark Wahlberg in Star Wars? No.
I forgot he was in Transformers.
Most people do.
I was like, was he in Star Wars?
He should be. He's like, hey, Darth Vader, I'm gonna give you a knuckle sandwich.
Yeah, he was actually the voice behind Jar Jar Binks.
So yeah, I grew up with Star Wars though, loved it, had the toys. I had the movies on VHS. In fact, we had a VHS tape that I guess they had shown a marathon of all the Star Wars movies, like on TNT or something like that. So my parents taped it, so it still has like Campbell's soup commercials and stuff like that. I actually tried to watch it today, the VHS, because there's an original version, and then George Lucas went in and changed a bunch of stuff in 1997 and like added special effects and stuff. And that version hasn't been released on DVD or Blu-ray since then.
I thought it had.
Actually,
no, he hasn't released.
It has.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because few years ago, when my wife and I were just dating, I told her, like, man, I really just want like the original trilogy, like without all these special effects and stuff. And so she found it, a little box set of the original trilogy, and of course, like the main widescreen feature film is the remastered with better visuals and the extended scenes. But in the bonus content, you could watch the original 1977 movie in
that's amazing.
In standard definition. And
like it has the square screen and all that.
Yeah, and I thought that'd be so fun to watch, and I stopped watching after like 15 minutes because like this looks like poop, and it just look weird. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. I feel like they like intentionally like severely lowered the quality because it looked like I was watching something through a potato. Like it just didn't look good.
It could have just been like a transfer of the VHS, like the VHS print of it.
It didn't look good.
I mean, that's really cool though. I'd like to see that because I tried to watch our VHS tapes, but our VHS player actually destroyed my my VHS tape whenever I tried to play it earlier today to watch it, and it like took out the tape, like it got stuck in the VCR, so I had to like roll it back with like by twirling the little cogs or whatever VHS tape, and so
bringing it back.
Yeah, well, and back to a shitty time period where the technology sucked and didn't work. But yeah, so I didn't get to watch the original in preparation for the show. It kind of made me sad, but so I ended up settling for the special edition.
But all the special edition is just the special features, right?
We'll get into the differences whenever we recap the show. But so Nick, obviously you grew up with Star Wars too, right?
Yeah, it's actually it's really not that funny, but so I remember this is how I found out about Star Wars. I was probably maybe around 10, probably a little bit younger than 10 years old, and we were taking a family road trip, and on the way home, my mom said, "Have you boys heard of Star Wars?" We're like,
oh my gosh.
And so she said, "All right." So we went to JJ's video, and we went and rented Star Wars, and it blew my mind. Rented on VHS. I was like, this is insane. And then, of course, we rented the other movies.
Yeah. Well, like for me, Star Wars is that thing that I don't remember life before Star Wars. Like it's pretty much as young as I can remember. I was always a fan of Star Wars and Indiana Jones. Like those are two movies that, like literally, I don't remember ever not having seen those movies. But JP, what was your first Star Wars movie to see?
My first Star Wars movie to see was
it Episode 1?
Yeah, and actually I remember seeing that, and I remember falling in love with Princess Natalie Portman.
Yeah. Shoot.
That's her name. That's her on-screen name too.
Natalie Portman, yes. And that was my first exposure to Star Wars. Probably at some point I was watching TV and had caught clips of Star Wars on TV.
The original?
Yeah,
trilogy,
the originals. Yeah. But I don't know. I guess there's a period of time where I didn't want to watch older stuff because I felt like it was lame. You know, I wouldn't be impressed by the special effects, anything like that. So I didn't really give much thought to to the story, to the script. But
so I feel like a lot of older stuff. So Star Wars, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, a lot of things that are near and dear to a lot of people of our generation that we might have seen whenever we were kids. If you don't see it when you're a kid, you might not like it ever. That's how I kind of feel. Because Chantel, my wife, didn't really grow up Star Wars and Indiana Jones and all that stuff, or Back to the Future. And so I've watched these movies with her, and I was like, they're the best movies ever, see? And then she looks at Back to the Future, and she's like, no, this is a creepy movie about a mom who falls in love with her son.
I mean, she's not wrong.
Exactly.
That's kind of what happens.
It's really weird if you think too much about it. And so that's the thing about watching them these movies at a young age is you're like, wow, this stuff's just magic, though. It's the best. And Star Wars, whenever I watched it this time, I really tried to see it through a new, fresh perspective and tried to imagine if this was my first time watching it, what types of things would I notice. And it's still the best movie ever. Even if I try to watch it like that, because I guess I can't divorce myself from that perspective. But we'll kind of get into it. So I kind of want to start off with Star Wars changed the way the movies were made, forever. In fact, if y'all look at a lot of popular movies from before Star Wars, because it came out in 1977, and a lot of the movies that were big box office successes were like The Godfather and stuff like that. Like,
Are you trying to dump on The Godfather? That's a great movie.
It is great. But the thing is, like, a lot of so if you look back at the classic movies of the 70s, a lot of them are, like, really, like, serious and grown up and made for adults. After Star Wars, though, and also Jaws had a big impact on this as well. Like, this is whenever we first started seeing blockbuster movies become, like, the dominating force in the box office. And so that's why, like, in the 80s, when you think of great 80s movies, what do you think of? Like, what types of movies do you think of?
Like action movies,
yeah,
like Rambo and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, or like crazy, like comedies, like just over the top.
I like the 80s high school movies that we were talking about that the other day.
And but a lot of the tone of 80s movies are really just kind of like big and exaggerated and over the top. So whether it's action or comedy or even horror, right? If you look at the horror movies of the 70s, like, and we can get into this whenever we start covering horror on the podcast, but y'all seen the original Halloween? Like the original?
Yeah, I actually did a report on it in college.
Nice. Well, but everyone thinks of it as like a slasher movie, but it's actually like there's like no blood in it, and it's actually kind of like slow paced and stuff and quiet.
Yeah, it's actually pretty boring.
Yeah,
I know I get a lot of ridicule for saying that, but it's about a dude in a mask who just follows this girl around, and then she's like, he's creepy, and he's like, I'm gonna kill you, and that's the movie.
Well, like he's not even like, I'm gonna kill you, because he doesn't say anything, right?
Yeah, he just has that blank stare on his face.
But you compare that to the 80s horror movies like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, and those are like just everything to the max. Like, there's just like just nonstop like blood and like, especially like Freddy Krueger is cracking jokes all the time, and so the 80s are all about like just bigness, right? And Star Wars, I feel like was the start of that. Again, in addition to Jaws, which I think came out in 1975. But so that's why Star Wars especially is really kind of important to watch, because you see the difference there. And also in the late 70s and in the 80s, you get a lot of, like, y'all seen like those cheesy 80s fantasy or sci-fi movies like The Last Starfighter or like Conan the Barbarian and stuff like that?
No, I haven't.
No.
Or you could even throw like Aliens in there, right? Or Terminator. And so, which I think those are great movies. I don't think those are cheesy movies, but it's kind of similar. Like, sci-fi and fantasy was big back in the 80s, and Star Wars kind of led the way with a lot of that stuff. So that's why obviously it's not just a great movie, but it really did change everything. So let's get into Star Wars: A New Hope, right? Whenever it was released, it was just called Star Wars. Then George Lucas ended up dubbing it A New Hope later on, and then he decided he's going to make 3 prequel movies, and then he called it Star Wars Episode 4. In 1997, he came out with the special editions where he added a bunch of special effects. The way that he said it was, he said, the original versions were unfinished. This is the finished version. And so he went in and added all these crappy like CGI effects, and we'll kind of point those out as we go. And but nowadays these are like the official version. And he even went back and changed it again for the Blu-ray release, like in 2011, I think. And like he added, you seen that, Nick? At the end of Return of the Jedi.
Oh yeah,
the changes that he made. Hayden Christensen from the original, or from the prequel trilogy, makes an appearance. Right. So, and also Darth Vader. You know about the Darth Vader thing? He goes, "No!" at the end of it.
This is Return of the Jedi?
Return of the Jedi. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there. It's the worst.
So he just says no, like he's just having a bad day and just goes no.
Well, okay, we'll save it for that episode. It's the worst.
All right.
We'll get into it though. So JP, I want you to give us a rundown. This is your very first time seeing Star Wars, beginning to end, right?
Right.
So what's Star Wars about, JP?
So the movie starts. We're in outer space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
After these big old words go through space, there's a battle taking place at the beginning. A battle. So And it's not very long until you see Darth Vader.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So okay, I love Darth Vader.
Darth Vader's the man.
He's the best. I think he's the best villain in all of villains.
Yeah, you just look at him and you're like, that is a bad
partly
dude.
because I love his suit.
Yeah.
I love this Darth Vader suit, and I love the stormtroopers. But like Darth Vader, the way he talks, like his breathing, and I love Darth Vader. But anyway, he's looking for Princess Leia because she is part of the rebellion going on. Darth Vader is unhappy with her. Okay, and he also the rebellion, they have a like main base called the Battlestar.
Wait.
I mean, not the Battlestar, the Death Star.
So the Empire has a base called the Death Star.
Right. I'm sorry, I got confused. But no. So yes, the Empire does. But so Darth Vader wants to know where their rebellion base is.
Yeah.
And so, but Princess Leia won't tell them, and she gives R2-D2, I guess, directions or the instructions on how to get to the base, right?
Well, no. So Leia gives R2-D2 instructions on how to blow up the Death Star. They figured out how to destroy the Death Star, and so Darth Vader's after that. But yeah, he also wants to know where the Rebel base is so he can destroy them. So yes, but that's what R2's got. He's got the plans on how the Rebels can blow up the Death Star. So that's why Darth Vader's got to get it.
Okay. Well, I thought he was also wondering like where their base was.
He is.
Okay.
But he's trying to get that information from Princess Leia rather than from like R2-D2 doesn't have that.
Who doesn't speak English.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's a robot.
He speaks in bleeps and bloops.
Well, anyway, so the machines, they end up fleeing. We have R2-D2 and
The machines?
The machines, yes, the robots. And Princess Leia is taken captive by Darth Vader and his fleet.
Very good. Yes.
Yes.
And like what I love about the movie is that R2-D2 and C-3PO are the main characters for like the first 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's awesome because they're cool robots, right? Like they're funny. Like C-3PO is like this uptight, little twit, and then R2-D2 is like this little
robot egg.
He's kind of like sarcastic.
Yeah.
He just.
But it's like, how does a little trash can that bleeps and bloops have personality?
Mm-hmm.
That I don't know. They make it happen sometimes.
Right,
somehow.
right. So anyway, they go to this desert planet. So
what's it called?
This desert planet reminds me of like the planet in Dune.
Arrakis.
Yeah.
Yes,
Arrakis,
very
yes,
good.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what's it called in the movie?
I forgot.
Tatooine.
Tatooine.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm terrible with names, especially when it's a name like Tatooine. Can't remember. So anyway, the
another Dune reference. So, and I think I pointed this out in our Dune talk. The stormtroopers are basically like the Sardaukar from Dune as well. The kind of Imperial troops, basically the same thing. Anyways, continue.
So anyway, the robots, the C-3PO and R2-D2, they go their separate ways after having a disagreement. So it's just funny. It's funny seeing R2-D2 go on the sand. He just kind of goes. He reminds me of kind of like a trash can, like a portable trash can.
Like what happens if he like falls over?
Yeah, I
How
know
does he get
exactly
up?
right. Yeah, and but he makes it. He makes it eventually until basically the inhabitants of some of the inhabitants of this planet.
What are they called?
It starts with a W.
No. What are they called, Nick?
Jawas?
Yeah.
Jawas. It has a W in it.
And they're like,
Jawas. Yeah, I know. I love the way they talk. Like you don't really see their faces. Like they're hooded, and you can see their eyes. Yeah, and actually, okay. So we have the inhabitants of this planet. We have the Jawas, and then the desert people.
The sand people.
Sand people. Okay.
Yeah.
And so are they like? Is anybody like? Are they just living separately, basically?
That's a good question. I imagine that there's probably like a Jawa and sand people, like Romeo and Juliet situation somewhere on the planet. There's got to be a Jawa that's fallen in love with a sand person, and maybe they, their families aren't okay with it, but they hang out together anyways. There's probably like a whole nother side story that they could have written there.
Yeah, because I was curious because I know in the first one, going back to I said the first one, the Star Wars Episode 1,
Okay.
we go back to little Darth Vader before he's Darth Vader.
Uh-huh.
He's like a slave to what's his name?
The Jewish guy, Watto.
Watto.
He's an alien.
We gotta pod race.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I was making sure like the sane people weren't, slaves of the little Jawas. But
Oh, I don't know. Honestly, who knows the politics of Tatooine? Okay, so what do they? Where do they end up? C-3PO and R2-D2.
Well, they end up with they're in like the Jawas, some place where they're gonna be disassembled basically.
Yeah,
they're scrapping their parts to sell them.
There you go.
Yeah. So anyway, eventually they are freed. Remind me how again they're freed.
Oh, they're actually sold.
They're sold
to Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. Those are that's Luke Skywalker's aunt and uncle.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so okay. So here into the story, Luke Skywalker. Like it would be just so different, I guess, if I was watching this movie without having seen any other movie.
Yeah, I think because it's weird if you've heard so much about it and you've put together like the pieces in your head, but you haven't just seen it fresh for yourself. Mm-hmm. That must be a weird experience.
Yeah, because I didn't see Luke Skywalker in the making, but I already knew his story. I saw him. What happened in the last Star Wars movie with him join the Force basically.
So how did this version of Luke live up to your expectations?
I mean, it was like what I expected. He was young and energetic, kind of.
He's like
kind of whiny.
Yeah, kind of whiny, I guess. Yeah,
a little brat.
Yeah, you want to slap him around, but he's a Jedi, so not trained by then, but so anyway, basically Luke, he's messing with R2-D2. He sees the message from Princess Leia. He's very interested in her. He thinks she is pretty. And then I remember that Luke and Princess Leia, they're brother and sister,
yeah.
right? Okay.
Jokes on him.
Yeah. Okay. And so I kind of wonder how that's going to play out later on.
Uh-huh. See, I wonder. I have no idea. The answer's probably out there somewhere. But did George Lucas know that Luke and Leia were brother and sister whenever he started writing about them?
Yeah, you're just kind of on the verge of incest there.
Yeah, just close one. They dodged the bullet there, but they come close though.
Right.
At one point. So Luke finds out that Leia, Princess Leia, has a message on these droids. She's asking for who? Who's the message for?
She's asking for Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes. And so he knows this crazy old dude named Old Ben. So Luke Skywalker goes to Old Ben Kenobi, and what happens?
Well, evidently Old Ben Kenobi knew Luke's. They talk about Luke's dad.
Yeah, but also before that, right? They encounter that's when they encounter the Sand People.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I got a Dune note because Nick, have you ever wondered about the Sand People and have you ever looked at their face?
In Star Wars?
Yeah.
And it looks like they're wearing a mask, right?
Yeah. I've always been curious as to what is face and what is mask or clothing. But it kind of, again, another Dune connection, it kind of makes you think, are they wearing a still suit type thing, in Dune? But anyway, so Luke talks to Obi-Wan. Old Ben learns that he's Obi-Wan, and they talk about his dad, right? What does Luke learn about his dad?
Well, first of all, Luke learns that they knew each other. He's told that his dad's dead, which, obviously isn't true. But his dad was a Jedi, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Yeah, so Luke, realized that his father was a Jedi. And so this is all new news to Luke.
Yeah, and he also finds out. Don't they say that his father was killed by Darth Vader? Or is that?
Yes. Yeah, they say that Darth Vader killed your father.
Okay, but Obi-Wan knows that this is not what happened, right?
Yes, he's lying.
He's lying, okay. Okay, and so then at some point, they go up into space and they meet Han Solo.
Well, okay, so we got a couple things before that, because I actually wanted to point out. So the very first time we see someone use the Force in this movie.
Oh, right.
Nick, when do you think that is?
That's when they. Okay, I know. That's when Luke Skywalker takes C-3PO and R2-D2 and crazy old Ben to Mos Eisley on Tatooine, and their stormtroopers are looking for the droids. So in the meantime, y'all forgot to talk about how the Imperials sent tons of stormtroopers down to Tatooine to look for R2-D2 and C-3PO. So there's a big spaceport called Mos Eisley, and when they go out there, they get stopped by these two stormtroopers, and they go, "Hey, what's in the back there? Those look like droids that we need." And then Obi-Wan Kenobi waves his hand kind of nonchalantly and looks really weird, but he says, "These aren't the droids you're looking for." And they go, "These aren't the droids we're looking for." And then Luke Skywalker's like, "What's happening?" And then Obi-Wan moves his hand again and goes, "Move along. Have a good day." And they go, "All right, well, get out of here. Have a good day." And then they drive around, and then they go to a bar to look for a pilot.
Yeah, so missed a couple things, but actually the first time that we see Force power is actually Darth Vader. So Darth Vader goes up to the group of Imperial generals or whatever are sitting around the table, and they're like the support of the Imperial Senate, and they're all being just sniveling little weasels, and then so Darth Vader Force chokes the dude, right?
Yeah.
He's like, "You disappoint me." Yeah. And so I love that. I love seeing the awesome evil spaceman Force choking some little turd. But that's actually the first time we see the Force, and so we're like, okay, these guys have magic powers now. And
that just must be so weird. I'm sorry, seeing Star Wars for the very first time without knowing anything. I wish I could have experienced that.
Yeah. And it's like, oh wow, there's magic.
Yeah, because with me, I'm like, oh, obviously that's the Force. But someone back in the '70s when they're watching, they're like, what is that? You know what? How was he able to do that?
It's kind of like JP, you never watched Lost, did you?
Nope.
Nick, obviously you watched Lost.
Yeah.
Have you? So remember back in the heyday of Lost, and people would talk about Lost just all the time, and. I remember there was a time when I tried to introduce a friend of mine to Lost, and so we started watching it from the very beginning. But I had been talking about it all the time for years, and so it made the experience of watching Lost for my friend really confusing. Because they were all like, "Oh, is asking about oh, the Man in Black, is this the Man in Black?" and all that. And I'm like, "Oh, that doesn't even come to play till the end of the show." But because they knew too much, it made the rest of the experience confusing, I guess, or it kind of spoiled the rest of the experience. But we also skipped over how Luke wasn't sure about whether or not he wanted to join Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then he gets home and Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru have turned into skeletons. And so then he doesn't have a choice but to go with Ben Kenobi to Obi-Wan to Mos Eisley, where they meet my favorite character,
Han Solo.
Han Solo, that's right, baby. So why do they need Han Solo, JP?
They need a pilot.
Yeah, they need to get into outer space. How are you going to get into outer space without a pilot? Actually, I want to talk about though how this is where we get some crappy CGI. There's a little bit whenever they get into Mos Eisley, but the worst is the scene with Jabba the Hutt. You know what I'm talking about, Nick?
Oh, in the remake?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird and awkward.
Yeah, it's the worst. Because, the part whenever Han, walks behind Jabba the Hutt and, he, goes, upwards. Because originally Jabba the Hutt was supposed to be a human whenever they first shot that scene. He was just supposed to be a dude. And so Han Solo walks around him whenever he's talking. But it's like whenever they went back and changed that scene, now Jabba the Hutt's a giant slug man. And so they rationalize it by, oh yeah, Han Solo steps on his tail. And so they digitally altered it so that he goes upwards like he stepped over his tail. But it looks terrible. Like if you really pay attention to it, like it's the worst. Also, they had that scene whenever they altered it so that Greedo shoots first instead of Han shooting first, which is also weird. But so anyways, they get on the Millennium Falcon, right, which is Han's ship. They get into outer space. Where do they go, JP?
Once they get into outer space?
Yeah, where are they going?
They're going to the Death Star.
Yeah, so they're going to Alderaan, which is the princess,
okay.
which is Leia's home planet. But they go there, and it turns out it's been blowed up.
Right, because they're going, all of a sudden they're like, what is that? Is that a planet? And
But I think you're missing out an important part of why it was blown up. And JP kind of talked about this earlier, but Princess Leia, she's held captive in the Death Star. Darth Vader shows up and says, yo, you got to tell me where the rebels at. She's like, I won't tell you nothing. And Darth Vader says, listen, you're going to tell me or else I'm going to kill all the people on your planet because we think that's where they're hiding. She goes, I'm not telling you nothing. And, all right, cool. And so Darth Vader and his crew go up to the viewing deck, and you got some general who's kind of weaselly, and he goes, let's see how this bad boy shoots. And then then he pushes a button, the generators start whirring, you got people moving levers, all these green lights coming everywhere, and then a giant laser comes out from the Death Star and goes straight to Alderaan and blows it up. Princess Leia's sad.
Yeah,
then,
that's pretty crazy. I mean, they blew up an entire planet. You know, what if this big alien ship came and just destroyed Earth?
Yeah,
it just happened just like that. He said, Darth Vader asked a question, he didn't get an answer, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna blow up your planet. No more questions asked. So
yeah.
I mean,
and then Crazy Ben, he's hanging out in the Millennium Falcon, and he goes, the tears of 1,000 people just went silent. It's like they all cried out, and then there was nothing. Then everybody's looking at him like, man, is this guy on something? Like, what is he saying? And then they get to Alderaan, or what should be, and they basically run into an asteroid field. Like, man, this is crazy. With space rocks everywhere. And then that's when they accidentally get into the Death Star.
The Death Star. And so this was always my favorite part of the movie, because because their mission is first of all to leave the Death Star, right? They just want to get out of there, right? But then they find out that Princess Leia is there, which honestly, if you think about the plot of this movie too much, it's so many coincidences, right? Like, what are the odds that C-3PO and R2-D2 would get directly to Luke Skywalker, who knew Obi-Wan Kenobi, and all that stuff, and then what are the odds that they would just end up on the Death Star where Princess Leia is? So it's a lot of coincidence.
Yeah.
And what does Han Solo say? Never tell me the odds.
Yeah, it's like, obviously the odds are pretty good, Han Solo. But so they're on the Death Star, right? Obi-Wan Kenobi, he needs to go turn off the shield generator so that they can get out of the tractor beam or whatever, so they can get out of the Death Star. Meanwhile, Luke and Han figure out that the princess is there, so what do they decide to do?
JP?
Sorry, that's funny. What do they decide to do, JP?
Once they discover Princess Leia's there, they decide that's their mission, to save her.
Go rescue her,
Yeah.
So they put on some stormtrooper outfits. They head on over there. They break her out. She's turns out she's kind of a badass, right? She's all like, somebody has to save our skins, and starts grabs the blaster and starts shooting. What happens then? Oh yeah, they jump into the garbage chute, right?
Right.
And so this part, so Nick, you know this obviously.
Yeah.
So the Star Wars Dark Forces video game, remember that?
I do.
Man, that third level. Remember the third level, Nick?
Yeah, you basically hang out in the sewers, trying to get out of the sewers, and then the creature that's in A New Hope is all throughout that level. You really don't even know what this creature is. All you know is you see one, like, mangy-looking eyeball floating around, and then a bunch of, like, tentacles.
But what always frightened me about that video game is that you see the monster, you see the whole thing, right? So in that level where you're in the sewers, the thing comes up and it's huge. It has like this giant mouth, and like it's like that terrified me as a child. Like playing that level, I never got past that because it was so scary.
And so while they're in the garbage chute, before like, hey, something touched my leg, and then like Han Solo's like, man, quit being a sissy, Luke. And then all of a sudden, one of them goes underwater, and they're like struggling fighting this octopus thing, and then and then the wall, and then all of a sudden you hear like the door, like some loud noise, and then it stops away, and then Luke comes up, and then they're like, man, what happened to you? Because guys, there's something in here. Then the walls start coming together, trying to crush them.
It's like not only is there a monster, but the goddamn walls are smushing him now. How does the monster survive that? You know?
See, he's got a secret hole in the bottom of this thing. It's like his home, and so he's like, hey, they want to crush the trash. I'm going to go peace out, watch TV, and hang out.
But yeah, so they get out of there, though, right? They they get saved by R2-D2. Yeah, that's right. So, well, you know, that little trash can's good for something. And they get out. What happens next? They're running to the Millennium Falcon, and then they see Obi-Wan fighting Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. First lightsaber fight.
And man, does it disappoint.
Yeah, not too long. And it was just weird because it's not the way I expected it to go. It was a lot shorter. I thought it was going to be longer. And
see, okay, think about this though.
But I know that he was doing that for Luke Skywalker.
Yeah,
he lost for Luke
he lost
Skywalker.
On purpose.
Yeah,
and also it's the very first lightsaber fight ever in the history of the world.
Or the history of Star Wars movies.
History of the world. There was never a lightsaber fight before that.
I guess you're right.
Lightsabers didn't exist. And so, like, if you think about it like that, like, there's nothing else to compare it to.
Yeah, she's going to go like a sword.
It's fine.
Maybe not, but hey, okay, this was the first lightsaber fight, but there had been plenty of sword fights in movies prior to this moment. You got all these swashbuckler tales with pirates and stuff. They had swords, which is basically what a lightsaber is. They couldn't take any notes before 1977.
Well, okay, but like, Alec Guinness, the actor who's playing Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's an old man. What's he gonna do? Like,
man, you know what's crazy about movies? Probably the craziest thing about movies is there's these people that are paid to do stunts. They're called stunt doubles. They could have gotten some dude, put some fake facial hair on him, get some, like, you know, not some straight-on shots of this guy, and they could have fought. And, you know, Darth Vader, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's in a costume, so it doesn't matter what he looks like. You could have two stunt doubles fighting it out, but no, you get this old man who barely moves his hands, Darth Vader who's like swings at him twice, and they just talk for 5 minutes, and then Obi-Wan looks over, sees Luke, and goes, "See ya, kid," and then Darth Vader like slices him in half. I mean, it's boring, and I get it. Like, at the time, you're amazed because it's like, oh man, they got these light swords. But this is another thing that bugged me. So Obi-Wan is a Jedi Master. Granted, we don't really know this at the time, but the dude knows his stuff. They tell you that he knows his stuff. Darth Vader, he's a bad dude. He knows his stuff. What do? They like dance like middle school kids and like swing swords at each other, and then Obi-Wan says, "All right, I'm gonna take a nap now," and then he gets cut in half. I mean, it's not that exciting, but I get it.
In this first movie, at least, they never established that Jedi Knights are good at fighting, right? They got magic powers, but it never says that they're like great fighters or whatever, right?
Yeah, I know, and maybe that's because like I know what they should be in this moment,
mm-hmm.
and you know, maybe George Lucas didn't know what was going to happen in the world around it, so you know, I do give it a pass, and even though I just kind of ranted on it for a good minute and a half, but I do give it a pass. Like I know, like they were still trying to create this world, and you know, he didn't know where it was going to go, but I mean, it as a kid, seeing it for the first time, yeah, it's pretty cool.
My favorite, my favorite part of that is after you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of disappears after he's hit by the lightsaber. Darth Vader like kind of kicks his like the pile of clothes. His sledge, like, huh? Yeah. Is he under there?
Is he really gone? What happened?
Yeah.
And then Luke immediately hears his voice, right? So this is actually the third Force power that we get, which is the Force Ghost.
This is actually the first sign of schizophrenia and the Star Wars.
And so, yeah, so they get aboard the Millennium Falcon, they zip on out of there, and then I guess we're kind of at the end of the movie, basically, right? Because and I never caught this until actually I was rewatching it this time, but I guess while the Millennium Falcon was parked in the Death Star, the Empire went and planted a tracking device inside of it. So they tracked the Millennium Falcon back to the Rebel base. That's how they knew where it was. And so the Death Star basically follows the Millennium Falcon back to the Rebel base, which is at that jungle planet, Yavin 4. So the final scene in the movie, the final action scene, is basically the Death Star's fixing to blow up the Rebel base planet, and the Rebel Alliance is sending out their fighter pilots to go blow up the Death Star, because now they know how, right? They got R2-D2, they know how to destroy it. And so you get a bunch of Star Fox pilots, and they jump in and go down the trench, right?
And I gotta say, this is probably one of the most iconic scenes in Star Wars, doing that trench run in the Death Star.
Yeah.
And it's so fun. Dietz, we talked about it a little bit in History of the Video Games episode, but did you play Star Wars Rogue Squadron?
Yeah, man.
So as a bonus, there's 3 bonus levels at the end of that game, I believe, and one of them was the trench run of the Death Star, and I played that so many times because as a kid growing up, who doesn't want to fly an X-wing and blow up the Death Star? Like, that's like the pinnacle of nerdiness, I guess, or and it was just really cool. And everybody sees this scene, like you've been seeing this Death Star in one certain light for most of the movie, and then like, wait a minute, you actually really get to see how big this thing is. It's so big, it has these laser turrets all on it, and it has these like little valleys and ridges and trenches all throughout it. It's a giant spaceship.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like the video game Star Fox is pretty much just Star Wars, but with animals. Like, it's pretty much just this scene of the movie, but a whole video game out of it. And it's tons of fun, right? They're like flying the ships around, shooting and all that stuff. And like, what's the deal though, JP? What's their objective? How are they going to blow up the Death Star?
Well, they have to. They're trying to like blow up the big laser, right?
So how can a single ship destroy an entire space station, JP? They got to shoot the laser, their little torpedo things, into the hole, right? So there's this teeny tiny little hole that they got to fly their ships to down the trench, and they got to shoot at the exact time. The computer's supposed to tell them when to shoot, and that's supposed to, the hole basically goes all the way to the center of the Death Star, and it's going to explode the whole thing. But the thing is, the computers don't do the best job, because they got the one pilot who, almost there. He shoots it. And
I know, right?
Yeah, you got it. But then,
I thought it was like a TIE fighter got in the way.
No, it just misses, and so the computer is faulty. So then Luke goes for it. Everyone else is dead except for Wedge, Wedge Antilles, who actually appears in the other original trilogy movies.
Is that guy the one that Luke? That's like Luke's friend.
No, so Biggs is the guy with the mustache.
Yeah, okay.
And
I'm sure he gets blown up.
Yeah, he blows up, and then Luke's sad, but then we don't care because we never seen him before, so we're like, whatever.
Yeah, I know.
But no, so Wedge actually survives because he's the one who kind of like, he leaves the fight because his fighter's damaged or whatever. And so Luke is, pretty much by himself. Darth Vader has showed up at this point, and he's like, kind of like just popping dudes off left and right. And he's got his cool little like curvy TIE fighter.
I like his ship a lot more.
By the way, the TIE fighters are awesome, aren't they?
Yeah, man, they're cool. They kind of zip around, and they got that sound like. Yeah, it sounds insane.
And, like, did you have Star Wars toys?
I did.
Did you have any like ships? Like, did you have the TIE fighter toy?
My brother, he had the Millennium Falcon, and so we played with that. But no, I didn't have any like a Y-wing or X-wing or anything else.
I had a X-wing and the TIE fighter, and it was the best. I was probably super annoying, running around my house like pew pew pew.
That's exactly how they sound.
And the best thing is whenever you get like your Ninja Turtles toys to team up with your Star Wars toys, and man,
Because why not, right?
Oh yeah, and they could fight the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. Toys are the best. Like, why don't we play with toys anymore? I don't get it.
Because we're old.
Well, that's why I'm jealous of you, Nick, for having a kid. You're about to have some fun in a few years.
That's actually why we had a kid, is so I could play with toys again and it not be weird.
Exactly.
Relive your childhood.
Good excuse. Of course, he's got to like the right stuff. Hopefully, he doesn't get into like Paw Patrol or whatever the kids are watching these days. I'm just kidding.
Hopefully, he doesn't get into like Pokemon stuff or Yu-Gi-Oh.
Hey, shut up, JP. Anyways, so Luke uses the Force, right? So he's about to blow up the what's it called? He's about
Death Star.
blow up the Death Star and shoot the torpedoes in the hole.
He hears Ben's voice, right?
Oh no! First, Han Solo comes back, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. Luke's about to get shot up, and Han Solo, you hear beep beep boom, and you hear Yahoo! And like, what is that? And you hear Chewbacca do his little Chewbacca thing, and then Han Solo's like, I couldn't leave you, kid. And Luke's like, all right. And then
because he thought Han Solo was fixing to dip out of there with his reward for rescuing Princess Leia, but it turns out Han Solo's not that bad of a dude.
He saves the day, and Luke says, all right, thanks, Han. He goes, don't worry, kid. Take care.
Meanwhile, like Darth Vader gets kind of like pushed off to the side, and he's kind of like just shooting off into space. But yeah, so Luke hears Obi-Wan's voice. Let go, Luke.
Well, because at this point he's like, all right, let me get my computer back out so I can shoot my torpedoes. And then Ben says, let go, Luke, and he goes, use the Force, Luke. Yeah. And Luke's like, he's like, all right, cool, man, whatever. Doesn't question it. He's like, I'm hearing things, but it's all good. And then he's just driving through the trenches, and then he's like, I think I'll shoot now. So he does, and then JP, what happens next?
The Death Star blows up. So, but what does he have to use the Force for? Like, why is he saying use the Force?
To know when to shoot. Because because the thing is, you can't rely on computers for anything.
Well, he's got his little computer.
I mean, he's not even using Windows 95. It's
I know. It's like MS-DOS.
And at some point, doesn't Vader, though, he shoots R2-D2, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. R2-D2 gets blown up.
Yeah.
No, he gets, like, scuffed. He doesn't get blown up because he's still back there. He's like...
Yeah.
But like, does he somehow protect Luke's ship, or does...
Why are the droids on the ship? They don't do anything. They just kind of look around and like, hey, man, you're getting shot at. You might want to do something.
I guess they're kind of like in the second one, Luke kind of commands R2 to, like, make the prep for hyper jump or whatever. So it's almost like they're like a little co-pilot or something.
All right,
like that.
okay, that makes sense. But yeah, for the most part, it seems like they're just like looking around, like I hope I don't get shot.
Yeah, and then they get shot. R2-D2 absorbed the blow. He was kind of like a lightning rod.
Yeah. Well, but like, because I'm like, why wouldn't the robot be in the vehicle with him if the robot was important? Why is he all exposed on the outside like that? It's kind of not very...
I mean, it's space science.
I guess you
that's
can just remake
goes.
the robot, like they did at the
That's
end.
right.
So, I mean, he would be dead, but he was there for the crowning ceremony.
Yeah, that's right. He did fine. So yeah, they crowned, or they gave Luke and Han and Chewie medals, but they didn't give medals to the other survivors. Wedge Antilles didn't get a medal.
Yeah, but Luke blew up the Death Star. Han came in and cleared the way for everybody. So it makes sense.
Han sat the game out for most of it.
Yeah, but he also brought in Princess Leia. He was part of rescuing her. So granted, he didn't have a huge part on the Death Star fight, except that he saved the day. But he also brought the princess back to the rebels on Yavin 4, and so that was his contribution. He did a lot. And then he also winked at Princess Leia and was like, I love you, baby. And she's like, save it for the second movie.
Yeah, well, that's something I noticed big time is that in this movie, they don't really, I guess they bicker a little bit, but Han and Leia don't really interact all that much in this movie. Whereas in the second movie, they're hot for each other. They're like, oh yeah, like they're into each other. But we'll get into that next week though. So yeah, Star Wars. What'd you think, JP, overall?
I thought, first of all, I'm happy that I finally watched the original, the first one, you know, since I never have, and also I've seen all these other Star Wars movies, so I think that's also what kept me from watching the first original trilogy, because I kind of had an idea of what happened. And,
yeah, it seemed unnecessary.
I know like what happens before the story, and now I know what happens after the story because of the most recent movies that come out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it seemed unnecessary to watch it, but it's I feel more fulfilled by watching it. I'm looking forward to finishing everything out, the second two. But yeah, like I said, it would be really interesting experiencing watching the movie when it came out.
Yeah, or just as a child and not knowing the like before the prequel movies came out.
Right, yeah.
At least, yeah.
Or just because it was kind of one of the first movies of its kind.
Well, so Nick, as a parent, what are you gonna do? Because are you gonna introduce Nolan to Star Wars and stuff? Have you thought about like when to show it to him and all that?
I haven't thought about when, but yeah, I definitely want him to see it because obviously one thing I really want to look forward to is sitting him down and watching The Empire Strikes Back, where there's that big twist at the end, and just kind of seeing, kind of almost reliving it watching this movie for the first time through his eyes, you know, and seeing how, you know, he watches this story and, you know, he's probably not even gonna care, you know. Now we have all these Marvel movies and they're super, you know, special effects and everything. So he's like, man, what is this garbage? You got, yeah, but I don't know. It'll be fun. But to answer your question, I don't know. Probably when he's like 5.
Yeah. Are you gonna show him the prequel movies?
What I want to do is I'll probably show him the original trilogy first. Like, hey, this is the original trilogy, and then so I'll probably do original trilogy, prequels, and then the others.
Yeah. See, what you need to be prepared for is be prepared for him to like the prequel movies a lot more than the original trilogy, and be prepared for him to love Jar Jar Binks.
Which is weird because whenever the like episodes 1, 2, and 3, are you saying be prepared for him to like the episodes 1, 2, and 3 more?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like kids are gonna like the original trilogy, or sorry, the prequel trilogy more. Because even talking to, well, my students are a weird situation because whenever I first started teaching a few years ago, before they started coming out with new Star Wars movies, most kids liked the prequel movies. Now, the kids who like Star Wars like the newer ones, which is fine, because whatever you'll say about the newer ones, they're way better than the prequel movies, okay? Even people who hated, like, you know, Solo, a Star Wars story, could probably agree that it's better than, you know,
I still like those little spin-off movies as well. I mean, I don't know if they're really spin-off movies, but
Solo and Rogue One, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought they were kind of, I enjoyed them both, but I've kind of forgotten about them since, because we saw Solo back, was that last year that came out? But yeah, so I don't know, they're fine, but kind of forgettable, but I mean, they're enjoyable enough.
Dude, Rogue One was pretty good. I felt like Rogue One was a great Star Wars movie in this great Star Wars tale. It had all the elements you needed, awesome fighting scenes, awesome battles, these kind of random ragtag team of rebels kind of getting together and saying, hey, let's cause some damage to the Imperials. And also, it's a really cool movie because it talks about how they got the plans on how to destroy the Death Star. And so it leads, so when Rogue One ends, it goes straight to the beginning of A New Hope. And that is pretty fun for me. I mean, it's a good movie, has some awesome scenes, and then it just flows directly into A New Hope. As soon as that movie ends, boom, you're watching the big words in space, like JP said.
Right, it gets you hyped for the best Star Wars. Do you think that A New Hope's the best Star Wars movie, Nick?
I don't know. I'm tempted to say yes, just because I've seen that one the most.
All right, very nice. Okay, so that's all for Star Wars talk for this episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe to us if you haven't yet, and give us a like on Facebook as well. We're going to be dropping our book discussion episode in which we cover Frank Herbert's Dune, Book 2, this Sunday. And then next Friday, we'll be coming out with our Part 2 of Star Wars The Original Trilogy discussion. We're going to talk about Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So, thanks again for listening. I'm your host, Tyler Dietz, and I'm joined by JP Cochran and Nick Grant. We'll see you guys this coming Sunday.